Hey everybody, this is Chris, MTGO's Rec Start, and we are back for episode 2 of the new Show and Tell series, as Kuma has dubbed it. I like the name, going to stick with it, and the idea is to take the deck text that I was doing in my archetype series and port it over to sort of a week-by-week look at what's being played, and I'm going to take a look at deck lists and replays and see how everything sort of fits together week to week and how the metagame is developing and so forth. This week, I finished first place with a snake list, and I had run this list once before and made a couple of small changes to it. One very big change that Kuma had suggested was to replace Ranger's Path with Sky Shroud Claim, which was fantastic all day and made a huge difference. I totally was not aware of the existence of this card until he pointed it out, and we'll take a look at a replay where I have a really bonkers turn involving Lotus Cobra and Sky Shroud Claim. But the idea here is that if you're going to play a ramp deck in Tribal, the elements of the ramp deck have to be mana production and fatties, either big creatures, big sorceries, something that you're ramping into that will win you the game. And the only tribe that really gets you both of those things is Eldrazi. And Eldrazi could not be played in endangered events as we were playing in this past week. So you're going to have to probably settle for getting only one of those two things from the tribe that you pick. And in my opinion, those are both equally valid approaches. And I got a little poked, AJ poked a little fun at me for having a snake deck that won with Praetors and Bees, but to my mind, it's a distinction without a difference whether you're playing the fatties off tribe or whether you're playing them in tribe and having to use your support slots for the mana ramp. And there are pros and cons either way. If you're going to build it like this, using a mana-producing tribe like snakes, you do have the advantage of being able to pick the best creatures that you want to ramp into from outside the tribe in your support slots, but you also have the downside that this is the format where creatures go to die, and using creatures that you may have to untap with to get any value out of them is a lot more fragile than using some kind of mana ramp sorcery, which is much less likely for your opponent to be able to disrupt because there are many fewer counterspells played in this format than there are creature removal. And something like a Lotus Cobra certainly has a big giant target painted on its back as soon as you drop it. So you have the drawback that your mana ramp is a little less reliant, and you also have the drawback that you are not, because you're relying on some of these creatures remaining in play, able to just play things like Fire Spout or Pyroclasm to deal with the aggro swarm decks, and so you have to calculate that into your choice of what you're ramping into. And I tried out in my first build of this one of these guys, and I upped it to 2 because I found that these guys were very good ramp targets to stop aggro swarm. Putting 5 Death Touch creatures out onto the battlefield is going to give you a really good board presence, very defensive, and also not inconsiderable offense when you need to turn your guns on the opponent. And of course, Elish Norn has although it is much more fragile, it can be taken out 1-for-1 with commonly played spot removal. But on the other hand, it does have the chance to just wipe your opponent's board or much of it just by entering the battlefield. So you do get the value out of that. And that is one of the things we talked about being important in my ramp archetype video from last fall, is that the thing you're ramping into shouldn't be something that they can deal with very easily on a 1-for-1 basis. And if they can, you need to get value out of it just by it coming into play, such as Elish Norn. So Hornet Queen obviously gives me something they can't just trade a Path to Exile or Sword Splashers for, and Simic Sky Swallower, by virtue of having Shroud, is a very good finisher here. Some of the very specific card choices, when I was doing my video last fall, I talked about how your ramp deck should have a ramp curve, and some decks say if you start with the Llanowar Elves into a Kodama's Reach into some kind of 5-drop, that's a 1-3-5 curve. This is a 2-4-7 curve, and it is built around these all of these guys here have the potential to ramp you from 2 to 4. The Sustainer and the Elder, most reliably, the Lotus Cobra requires you to have another land to play on your third turn in order to go from 2 to 4. 4, but it's extremely explosive when you do, and there are a lot of other possibilities. Coiling Oracle is kind of hit or miss. It might ramp you to 4, it might just draw you a card, but of course the ability to draw a card is one of the things that's important in ramp decks, is that you'll be able to dig for those fatties, and so at certain points of the game you're essentially just cycling this guy, or having a chance to sort of cycle this guy, or at least get a land either into play or a spell into your hand. So a very important aspect of playing a ramp deck is having some ability to dig, which that helps for. So having ramp from 2 to 4, I then have 7 spells that will ramp me from 4 to 7, assuming that I would draw another land on the subsequent turn. Either Sashi here, who generates 2 green mana, or Skyshroud Claim, which will put 2 forest cards out. Now Sashi, of course, will give my other Shamans the ability to make 2, so if I did play her off of, say, an Orochi Sustainer, then even if I whiffed on land, I would still get to 7 mana that way. If I don't get to 7 mana, of course, I've got Summoning Traps, which I can hit here at 6, and also Sashiro the Anointed, who I could drop down and try to beat in with a couple of these snakes, and try to draw a couple of cards, maybe get me to another land or another fatty. Once I do get to 7, again, I have the suite of guys that I referred to here, and looking at the mana base, this is not optimal. The one duel and fetch that I am actually missing is Savannahs and Windswept Heaths, so I went and I wanted to have all of my fetches fetch green, and I wanted to have a pretty good number of them because of the Lotus Cobras, so I have 10 fetches in here, and instead of being able to play Windswept Heaths, I just had to throw in a couple of Wooded Foothills here. Basic Island I wasn't sure about, but I did have Double Blue and Mystic Snake, and Mystic Snake is not going to really do too much in the early or even the mid part of the game. Mystic Snake, in practice when I was playing the deck, and this is probably a good role for him as a 2-of, basically just let me hold on to, once I'd established a lead, being able to pocket a Mystic Snake allowed me to hold on to the game. So it's nice to have a counterspell in tribe as well. Again, the principle of being able to have creatures in your tribe that fulfill spell-like roles that you might want in a deck. Mystic Snake definitely does that. Pendelhaven is just kind of a Mize card here. I do have the Elders and the Oracles and the Bees that could get pumped by that, but I don't see a lot of Pendelhavens played, so I'm not worried about losing that land to the Legendary Land rule. Let's go ahead and take a look at a replay, and where have I got that? Here it is. And this is against Kumagoro's Ooze deck, and he's played this one before. He has a Buried Alive combo with Necrotic Ooze, Devoted Druid, and some other piece that's an instant win. I can't recall off the top of my head. He never got it off in our games, but we'll go ahead and show the match here. I've got 2 lands, 2 Cobras. This hand has the potential to be absolutely insane as long as I draw another land, and I am on the draw, so I'm going to go ahead and take that gamble. Don't want to throw away a double Cobra hand too lightly. And now, of course, I've got a backup here because I did draw a guy who, the Orochi Sustainer, who I can also play out. And I go ahead and play him out there. And Kumagoro's developing his mana. Now he's got a Predator Ooze down. He has a backup plan. You'll see in a bit he's got Pernicious Deed, and he has a backup plan of being able to wipe the board with Pernicious Deed and leaving only his Predator Ooze alive and dominating the board. And he's got a nice little army going there. Now, of course, I get pretty lucky here, and I'm going to have a rather big turn. So remember what's on the battlefield at the beginning of this turn. I've got 2 lands and an Orochi Sustainer. Misty Rainforest. I cast the Cobra first, drop the Misty Rainforest, and that's going to give me 3 mana off the Misty Rainforest and 1 from the Temple Garden. So that gets me to 4, so I can still cast my Skyshroud Claim, which I do. And the Skyshroud Claim is basically mana neutral if you have a Cobra out, because the Cobra is going to give you 2 mana off the land drops, and then you'll have the 2 lands coming in untapped from the Skyshroud Claim. So you can play Skyshroud Claim without losing any mana. It's basically like a ritual of sorts. If you have 2 Cobras out, it's an actual ritual. It increases your mana. Now here I took a little gamble. I went ahead with the 4 mana. Instead of just playing Sashi, I played out a second Cobra, and then I plopped down the Oracle with the other 2 mana, taking a little gamble that I might hit a land. Of course, at this point I would have to hit a fetch land to be able to play Sashi as well this turn, but I wanted to be able to dig further, and of course I did hit the fetch land, and so I was able to do it all. So as you can see there, in a single turn I went from having started the turn with 2 lands and a Roshi Sustainer in play, and at the end of the turn I have 6 lands in play, 2 Cobras, a Coiling Oracle, the original Sustainer, and a Sashi. So it shows you the kind of explosiveness that you can get with Lotus Cobra in combination with Sky Shroud Claim, Coiling Oracle, fetch lands. Now I've got a pretty good board here, but I'm going to have to get down my win condition next turn. And he goes ahead and drops a deed here, and he could wipe this board. I go ahead and play the Elder because I'm going to get back my 2 mana from sacking it anyways. Now I'm going to go ahead and cast the Simic Sky Swallower, and Kuma's not going to have an answer to that. And his Predator Ooze is going to grow, but I'm just going to block it. And using Coiling Oracle just to dig here, and I find a Mystic Snake. So at this point, the only thing that's going to beat me is Kumagoro somehow getting to 7 mana and being able to blow that deed and wipe my Sky Swallower. However, as we're going to see, that is not going to happen. And the Sky Swallower has Trample, so that bird is not doing too much to stop me from my plan. And he does not get there. So I'll show you a bit of this deck in action. There were actually 2 snake decks. Unfortunately, I had to beat 5 decks to get to first place, including 4 former champions. We had 3 undefeated people, and I played another snake deck, which was a tokens build of Sasuke Summons and Patagia Viper, and then I beat AJ's Minotaurs in the final. So it was a very long tournament, but a very successful one. And in part 2, I'm going to show you AJ's Minotaur deck, which came in second place, as well as a very expensive combo deck that lost in round 1 and then snuck into round 10 and kind of flew under the radar during the event if you didn't play against it, but which you might be interested to see. So join me in part 2.